Okay. So we really decided to do this event to bring together amazing inspirational women in Green Bay to SNC students and just community members in Green Bay. So I'm really excited to bring everyone together for this event. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement and anti-racism statement led by Ava Jeschke and Morgan Christensen.
Yay! In the spirit of the Norbertine value of stabilitas loci, a deep commitment to the local community, we acknowledge this land as the ancestral home of the Menominee Nation, which holds historical, cultural, and sacred significance to the community. We acknowledge the living history and contributions of the Indigenous communities that inhabited this land prior to the establishment of St. Norbert College, as well as the sovereign Native American nations who continue to contribute to the flourishing of our communities.
This is the anti-racism statement for the Norman Miller Center. As part of our work at the Norman Miller Center for Peace, Justice, and Public Understanding, we continue an ongoing commitment toward ending all forms of racism through education, conversation, and service in our community.
And then I'm going to say a few words just about our intentions for this event. But following the International Women's Day theme of Choose to Challenge, this event is centered around seeking out and celebrating women's achievements while also challenging and calling out gender bias and inequality. Keeping the Norman Miller Center's values in mind, we hope to create an inclusive world starting with our own community. My colleagues Ava Jeschke, Morgan Christensen, and Bethany Kreklow and I have come together to bring an amazing group of women here. And so really the intention of this event is to share their stories and perspectives and bring together just an amazing group of female leaders from Green Bay. And so we hope the attendees of this webinar will gain an understanding, appreciation, and empowerment from these women and the conversations to be had tonight. And we're going to get started just by introducing our panelists.
So first, I would like to introduce Dr. Anupama Verma. Dr. Verma is a board-certified nephrologist who serves the community in Green Bay for 18 years. She was born in India, grew up in Nigeria, and immigrated to the US to receive her residency at the University of Pennsylvania. She is a writer, speaker, and editor, and chief of the Women in White Coats blog. She is also the best-selling co-author of Women in White Coats Book 2. She believes in the power of stories and the importance of medical narratives to uplift and empower women in medicine and to improve patient healthcare.
Next is Joidon Jennings. So Joidon is the UX coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, but she's also a passionate advocate for many students, and she has amazing involvement in the Green Bay community. She was actually just featured in Collective Impact Greater Green Bay Chapter, where she shared her story from going from a college athlete to becoming an amazing strategic manager and strategic management employee behind the scenes of sports. And she has an amazing positive mindset, and her advice can help impact and empower many students, athletes, and people.
Next up, we have Representative Kristina Shelton. Kristina was elected to represent the 90th Assembly District in the Wisconsin State Assembly in November of 2020. Before this, Kristina dedicated her career to working alongside different constituencies to create healthier, more equitable communities where all kids, families, and residents thrive. Before her election to the Assembly, Kristina served on the Green Bay School Board for 2.5 years and has experience working with Wisconsin's Women's March and Black Lives United. Kristina's primary goal as a legislator is to advocate for the needs of Green Bay while supporting our local and statewide grassroots movement.
Next up is Abby Gildernik. Originally from De Pere and a St. Norbert College alum, Abby Gildernik is the current Assistant Athletics Director for St. Norbert College. Abby ensures SNC's departmental adherence to College Northern Athletics Collegiate Conference, Midwest Conference, Northern Collegiate Hockey Association, and NCAA policies and procedures. She assists in the supervision and oversight of all 23 varsity athletic programs and athletic department events. Abby also serves as a senior women administrator, business finance manager, and the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, or SAC. advisor.
Next is Marissa Mikkelkavich. So Marissa is the CEO of Giveadaam Ventures, which is an organization that works to introduce sustainable student housing into the Green Bay community. Giveadaam also highlights many important organizations and businesses within the city. And Marissa is also the Recycling and Solid Waste Program Coordinator at Allegheny County, and she is a former UWGB graduate. So she has a huge passion for the Green Bay community and sustainability, education, and involvement.
Next, I would like to introduce Ingrid Parker-Hill. Ingrid Parker-Hill currently serves as District Family Engagement Coordinator for Green Bay Area Public Schools. Before this, Ms. Ingrid served as the Community Development Manager for our local Girl Scouts Council, supporting volunteers and staff while allowing them to build and practice leadership skills that develop their confidence and character to serve as examples to their community. Her personal and professional journey has been to help others while seeking opportunities that support them in being their best and authentic selves. Ingrid recently received the amazing honor of being one of Wisconsin's 51 most influential Black leaders.
And Dr. Kristen Lyerly is a specialist in general obstetrics and gynecology. She is also a former candidate for Wisconsin State Assembly. Dr. Lyerly is currently in the process of developing a rural maternity care resource center to ensure that the providers of obstetrical services throughout the state have the training and resources they need to ensure excellent outcomes. Most recently, she is spearheading a local effort to organize and empower female physicians in northeastern Wisconsin to effect positive culture change in the name of our patients, creating a community of progressive activists in the region to elect strong down-ballot candidates and fight for fair maps, as well as nationwide work with doctors in politics to elevate the voice of medicine in politics.
So that is an amazing group of women, and we cannot wait to hear them speak. If you as attendees have any questions, please feel free to respond or to write them in the chat or the Q&A. We will get to your questions later in the conversation. However, we want to start with a question. What does identifying as a woman and women's empowerment mean to you? And so pretty much this conversation is going to be popcorn style. So I really want this to be organic. You guys can really jump in, but let's get started there.
So I can speak what being a woman means to me, because honestly, when I thought I was very lucky to be born a woman until I grew up and realized all the barriers that I face. I loved being a girl. I had 2 brothers. I was pampered as the only daughter. But as the differences became clear and the disadvantages I faced became clear in primary school, where even though I was sometimes smarter than the boys, I was not chosen to be the leader and in the team or the class prefect monitor. So that was one difference when I realized it wasn't a fair level field, and also as I grew older. But yes, I love being a woman and would not have it any other way. Yes. Thank you.
I would love to build on what Dr. Verma said, because she and I are connected in having recognized the misogyny in medicine here in Brown County. And she and I and a couple other doctors from the different health systems came together and decided that we needed to build a safe place for women in medicine in northeastern Wisconsin. And we opened it up to medical students too. So we've got the medical students who are rotating with the WARM program through the UW. We've got the medical students that live with you guys at MCW Green Bay. And we've got a group of outstanding female physicians who just get together to support each other and encourage each other and lift each other up. And the goal is to, once we create this community, it will continue to grow. And in the future, we will bring these medical students back and we'll have this really incredible group of female physicians, and we'll suppress all of that misogyny in medicine. We're very excited about it.
Yes. And props to you, Kristen. I love being a part of that. Thank you.
jump in to build on that. I am Ingrid, and I was born of a woman, and I identify as a woman. I don't think I've ever thought about being anything else, and so I'm very grateful for that. I think women empowerment, nope, not think, I know women's empowerment is the way that we are going to change the world. And so I believe for me, the first time that I saw a difference is when I got pregnant as a teen, and when I was going to a parochial school, and my guidance counselor, never talked about college to me and what that looked like. And then I was shunned at the church and what that looked like. And for me, I want to make sure that girls do not have to have that as a barrier. There are many opportunities, and we all have difficulties, but there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you.
I'll jump on and go. My name's Abby Gildernik, and I'm, as they said, I'm the assistant athletic director here at St. Norbert College. And as everybody was getting introduced, I kept hearing the different connections to sport. And obviously that hits home for me quite a bit, but especially in this last year to see overall, not only here, but at the professional level, where women in sports has gone has just been truly inspiring and keep lifting each other up. So I think that's the big thing to keep reminding each other, is that we do more of these things together where we lift each other and we all grow together. I think is huge and empowering for everybody.
I'm going to jump right on Abby's comment there. My name's Marissa Mikkelkavich. We'll pony on the sports conversation because I think the first time I really realized the whole difference between boys and girls and men and women in regards to how they're perceived by society was definitely in sports. I was a huge athlete in high school, and we had a fabulous team, both basketball, softball, but you can tell the difference in respect for sports for girls and guys, or men and women. And that wasn't that long ago. So just to see the difference in attendance and how different teams are allocated gear, it just really hit home, and it really burned me up. It still does. So when I got to college, I started our first official student section at UW Green Bay. If anyone's from the area and you ever see lime green bandanas, that was our charge as softball freshmen. But we started with the women's basketball team, and that was like our start to really hype them up. And we grew to be a pretty big force. And now I kind of carried on with that fury. And I've entered two very male-dominated industries, both in waste management, which I know who wants to dive into waste, but I love it. And then in construction. So I am a young woman entering very male-dominated fields, have since I graduated college. So my biggest deal with empowerment is just to basically be able to open the door for anyone who's interested, so that you can have that conversation with people who are in the fields early, not waiting till the end of your career to really dive in. So just hoping to be that voice for women in this area, to welcome them into fields that maybe they weren't comfortable joining before. So very happy to be here with all you very powerful women.
I think I'll bring it all home with the sports and male dominated everything. So I work in sports. I'm Joidon. I work in sports with the Packers right now. And I grew up playing sports, went to college on a basketball scholarship. Everything, my life is revolving around sports. So I've always been in a male dominated industry, always known that as a woman, right, we're going to have to be 5 times better. Our resumes, everything is going to have to be perfect. And then as a woman of color, on top of that, it's going to have to be 10 times better. So I've just always tried to strategically put myself ahead, if that kind of makes sense, even though women have always been in the back burner all the time, but behind every successful man is a successful woman, and behind every successful woman is a successful woman. So it's just like women are so powerful and we're so strong, and I just feel so empowered being on this panel with a bunch of strong women in male-dominated industries making a difference. So that's ultimately what I want to do, and I'm very appreciative talking and being here with you.
I love it. I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Shelton. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I love the sports thread that's happening right now, because I also was an athlete growing up. I was thinking when y'all were talking that I played basketball. My father used to scream at me on the court and say, "You're playing like a girl." And I remember turning into him and saying, "I am a girl, and this is how I play." And, you know, I think it just shows the way that we have to navigate the world every single day. The nuance, the way that, exactly to your point, the way that we have to work harder, we have to keep our shoulders back and our chin up, and we have to be 50 times better. When I was 23, I coached boys basketball. I was the JV boys basketball coach, and my assistant was a man. And I loved at the beginning of every game going up to shake hands with the other coach, and they would shake his hand, and I'd say, "No, it's me. I'm the coach. Actually, this is my space." And we went on to go undefeated that season. So, but you know, I think what's beautiful about women is the way that we approach work collaboratively, and we really sort of you know, we seek space to stand with one another, to support from behind when we need to. You know, I think that there are ways that our leadership shows up differently, and it's becoming more and more obvious that we need more people in leadership. And, you know, as women, we need to encourage each other to not wait to be asked to sit at the table, right? We need to pull up our own chair, and we need to demand space. And I think that's always been hard for me, is being taught as a woman to not take up too much space, being told that I'm bossy, that I am too opinionated, and why are you angry, and why do you, and really recently, you know, accepting that for myself, and not seeing it as a negative, and seeing it as a space that is for good. And I want to be able to provide that for other women too, to say, however your leadership shows up, or your voice, or your skill set, or your passion, we got you, because it takes everyone doing all the things to support women across the lifespan and wherever you are.
Thank you all so much for those. My arms are covered in goosebumps. There's no way I make it through this without a tear somewhere. But okay, our next question. So I am a sociology major, and the word intersectionality is like what I study day in and day out. And so I want to bring into this conversation the topic of intersectionality, and how, you know, our different identities, whether it be gender and race and age, socioeconomic status, occupation, you know, all of those amazing identities, sexuality. How do you see your different forms of identity in regards to intersectionality, especially with being a woman, interact? How might you have felt these would be different if you had different identities? I guess, yeah, how does being a woman play into different identities and intersectionalities?
Morgan, I'll jump in and just quickly say that, you know, for me, I think the awakening moment was moving away from centering my identity as the place that I understand identity and feminism and what it means to be a woman, and sort of not seeing myself as the center and then relating from the inside out, but really acknowledging that feminism and identifying as a woman, or the process of that and what that looks like, is beautiful no matter where people are, and that it shows up every shade of every color, right, and every space, and that it's fluid, and that one day it may show up one way, one day I might, you know, wear my high top Nike sneakers, which I do wear on the assembly floor, by the way, Dr. Lyerly. So I was like, I'm wearing sneakers, but the next day I wear heels, you know, and I can wear like a powerful suit. And I think giving ourselves space to honor what that looks like every day is some real power.
Yeah, I think women have to be true to their authentic self. Don't lose that as you pursue your career goals. Be true to yourself. And, you know, we have fear of showing our real selves as women. And I had it for a while until I turned 40 almost. You know, I had that fear. I cannot wear a pretty dress. I can't wear too much pink. I can't wear nice shoes or too much, you know, jewelry. I will be perceived as too feminine and not powerful enough to do this job. And you have to let go of that. Embrace yourself. There is power in being confident in your own authentic self. Yes. It takes time, but you have to work at it. Yes.
I'm going to jump in with that. So with being your authentic self, I think, especially when it comes to age. So everybody kind of has the perception that you're going to graduate and walk out of here and get a job right away. That didn't happen for me. I graduated from St. Norbert and I stayed on as an intern in the athletic department because I knew I wanted to work in sports, and I knew I had to keep a foot in this door to keep going in my career. And then I worked as a special education aide at a local school district. So I would do that in the mornings, and then in the afternoons I was able to continue working in athletics. And I know right when I graduated, everyone's like, "What? You're not getting a full-time job?" And it's like, no, I know what career I want to work in and what I need to do and how I need to grind to get to that. And I didn't really care what other people thought as long as I was happy in what I did. And now I get to sit here today, being back in a job that I don't consider a job. I love what I do, but not taking what people's perceptions that they put on you, especially with age, and what you can do.
Yeah. Another thing important is we all suffer so much, and women more than men, from imposter syndrome. And, you have to, that's something that you have to recognize if you have it, and speak up and ask for opportunities, because you're not going to be, I wasn't offered anything. I was looked over as if I didn't as if I didn't exist, and given to the man under me or the man beside me. And I never thought I would ask for it because I felt I couldn't do it. I don't have the skills. They overlooked me for a reason, not knowing that I had those skills and I could do it better. So, yeah.
I think that intersectionality brings a number of thoughts to my head, but one of the things is that we all have some kind of privilege. And when we talk about privileges, it's making sure that you know what your privileges are. And if you don't necessarily have a privilege in that category, helping others see what that looks like. And I think women can move a little bit more fluidly through those rings, so to speak. One of the intersectionalities for me is race. And when I did a privilege test, and of course I'm going into this test thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have any privileges, because of course there's a lot of things stacked against being Black or African American and other marginalized groups too. But then when I took it, there were two categories that for me stood out, and that was ability and religion. And so with that, I have a privilege, and so I have to use those to empower others. Even though I was not in my brain, I was like, oh, okay. And so what we're teaching our youth now, that plays a role in that, the imposter syndrome. I have a grandson and a granddaughter. My grandson is 2, my granddaughter's 4, and my son, who works at a waste management company, he brought home a truck for my grandson. And of course, my granddaughter wanted a truck. And she was like, where's mine at? And he was like, I didn't think she would want a truck. Now, so, granted, she asked for a pink truck, and there's no pink trucks, there's blue trucks, but still, not necessarily pigeonholing our youth to have a certain color, or you have to do this certain thing in order to fit into the scenario. But you can be you can choose to be what you want to be.
I'm a mom, like many of us, I would assume, are. And I was a mom when I started medical school, and I was a mom when I was doing my residency. And I was told that OBGYN was just too hard for moms. It was too hard for a woman with a family by a male mentor of mine. And for a long time, I didn't think about following my heart. And I was going to choose a different specialty because I respected him. And I was, I thought that was the right thing. But I ended up following my heart, and it has changed my life. I love my job every day, dealing with women's issues, they're so personal, and all of the advocacy stuff that goes along with women's health, being able to go to Madison and talk to Christina's colleagues down there and try to convince them, try to drive some sense into them, which is impossible these days. going to Washington, D.C. and doing the same. But I'm the mom of 4 boys. And it is really interesting being an OBGYN and then hearing my 21-year-old son and my 20-year-old son, my 12-year-old son and my 14-year-old son share their stories about their friends and their colleagues. And then I also have the privilege of mentoring many people, medical students and other folks across the country, and hearing their stories and recognizing the, like Ingrid was saying, we all have privileges, and it's an obligation of ours to listen and recognize what we have and teach. And I think through mentorship and through working with the youth and people who are coming up behind us, whether it's our own children or the people in our community, that is one of the most fundamental things that we as women leaders can do.
All right, I'm going to jump in now. So Dr. Verma might have said it, but the whole conversation being true to your authentic self, that was a good one-liner, and hit me to the core because I identify as a lesbian. So the whole concept of sexuality is a really strong focal point for how I run my business. So it wasn't really a conversation for me growing up, and not because my parents were opposed to it, but because that dialogue didn't exist, if that makes sense. So as I went through high school, like it was the same old story for every young girl. Like you want to fall in love with a boy, you want boys to like you. And for me, that came a little differently because it just never felt right. So I got to college and fell madly in love with a woman, and it rocked my world. And it took me probably until my mid 20s. I'm 27, almost 28 now, until I felt really comfortable with this authentic self. And it took a lot of conversation and inner reflection and just experiencing life to really come to terms with what that meant. So now in this position I'm in with my business, we work a lot with the community, and our focus is college students and young professionals. So now I feel like it's kind of a point I try to make, being very open with my sexuality and the sexuality, if they're comfortable sharing it, like all of the people we work with, because it's good to just start those conversations and show like, hey, you can be proud in this community. It's safe to be proud. And just really opening that conversation that I never had growing up. So hopefully it doesn't take 25 years for someone to feel comfortable in their skin when they probably could have saved 10 years and got a head start on their joy and happiness that I feel now and didn't have as fully then. So very important, this whole conversation of intersectionality. So good point.
Very, very, I wanted to cry when I heard your story because it hits home for a lot of people, I'm sure.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. I didn't realize that until.
I'll just say that I think what's
Oh, keep going.
Sorry,
I think
go
we
ahead.
lagged.
I was just saying, I think, the authentic self and the imposter syndrome are interrelated, right? Because the way that we strip away the facade of, what it feels like to be an imposter, or what that standard is for any of us doing what we do, is to get out there and do it differently, and to set a new standard, or a flexible standard, and say the way that it's been done before me is not the way that I'm going to shine. And then building a crew around you that's going to have your back, that will say, you do you, you have to be yourself. And I mean, I feel that way in politics. I'm not a politician by trade. I've never thought this would be possible for someone like me. I was an educator, an activist, and a community organizer. And when I got involved, it sort of almost fractured my personality for a period of time, because there are expectations of what you think it should be. And once I sort of just decided, like, I have to just be me, and whether people will accept me or they won't, either I'll lose or, however it is, but I have to be myself. It was so freeing. It was like, I don't have to show up and put on a performance. I'm going to talk about the things I care about. And, you think about giving that space to, people who come up behind you to say, hey, this is what I did, but you have to do you. And no matter what that looks like, I got your back.
Hey, awesome. Thank you all for those amazing conversations. That was awesome. We're going to move on to our next question. Kind of going back towards sports. So Abby and Joidon, how do you see women represented in sports in a college and professional setting? And anyone else can jump in because from your stories, it seems like almost all of you have a background in sports in some sort of way.
Well, now in today's society, I see females represented in a positive light. Going back kind of to imposter syndrome and confidence. I was watching the special on ESPN last night with Rachel Luba, and she was the agent of the highest paid Dodgers player. And one thing really stuck out that she was talking about was the fact on how her Instagram page, how she was feeling imposter syndrome basically about how I'm a female. Um, we wear a bunch of hats, right? We want to be an agent, but we're also a mother. We want to show the vulnerable side, all these different sides of our emotions. And it's just like we're judged so much by guys in society. And there were just so many hateful comments from people that could never do half of the things that she is doing. And it's just like you have to block out the negativity and you have to have the confidence and belief in yourself to know, hey, this is bigger than me. I'm like paving the way for other girls behind me that want to do the same thing. So that's what I think that sports is ultimately turning into. Sports is bigger than just yourself. It gives you something to believe in. It gives you something to look up to, and it ultimately brings people together. I just love sports and everything that it represents. So.
I think we are making steps in the right direction with women in sports, but it's a lot like a lot of industries where we can always do better. I'm part of Women's in College Sports, which is a network of women across the country for professional sports, Division I, Division II, Division III. And from that, there's circle groups, they have a lot of seminars. And I found that by having that network and those women around me that are in positions that either are the same or positions that I aspire to be in someday, having them in that group that I can call on and say, hey, there's a job opening, what should I do? And them without a beat going, apply. Surrounding yourself with powerful females helps you every step of the way. Also being open with who you work with, of where you want to go. So your next steps, your goals, your dreams, making sure that for sure your female counterparts know, but also your male counterparts. Because if you have a male that can bring you up with them and say, no, you're coming to this meeting with me and you're going to sit at the table because this is something that you should be talking about, I shouldn't be talking about, has definitely helped me grow in this position and where I am and my role in athletics for sure.
Yeah, the mentor role is very important. Be a mentor and also seek out a mentee to mentor, it's very important, the mentor and the mentee role, and you should play both in as much as you can.
I think athletics are so great because you have a team that's around you. And so many of us feel so alone. And that's why it's important to have a team like the group that Dr. Verma and I pulled together, because we have to be able to support each other and to encourage each other when we're having great moments. We need to share that. And when we're having low moments, we need that support from each other.
Dr. Verma, in a lot of industry, there's a lot of cross collaboration where you can find like groups of women or organizations that do that and allow you to network with people. So if you think that you're in an industry where you might not find that, there is people out there. It's just asking.
Very true. And I think I love the point Dr. Lyerly, Kristen made about sports. It's a team work and you can probably find people more easily. Medicine can be isolating. You're in your office by yourself, your clinic by yourself with patients and some support staff. And at night you're on call alone, and then you go home the next day, you complete your shift, and there's no one else to talk to except, you go home tired. And so in medicine, especially, I can vouch for that. We need to seek out mentors. Yes. And probably other professions. Yeah.
The other thing that's great about sports as well is it teaches healthy competition. It teaches a skill that sometimes you're going to win and come out on top, and sometimes you lose, and you have to be okay with that as well. But you keep coming back for the good fight. And as women, we're often categorized as being catty or tearing each other down, that we can't disagree. There's a colleague of mine when I served on the Green Bay School Board, and she was one of the few women in my initial sort of foray into politics where we could vehemently disagree and it never became personal. We were very good friends, and we would argue to the bone, and we would come back, and it was hard, but we kept coming back to one another and supporting one another. And we would not argue in school board meetings, but we would kind of go back and forth. And I remember in one of the meetings, I said to her in reaction, I said, "Hey, I hope what I said wasn't taken as a negative. I'm just trying to understand." And she said, "Oh no, of course, and that's just how we are." But after that exchange, I received, 10 to 15 emails from people saying, "Of course, how dare you tear her down? How dare you, have that interaction?" And I think we don't, as a society, still embrace that competition, that exchange of either whether it's intellect or on the court or on the field, and say, like, as women, we can come back to this and keep fighting. It's not personal. At least for me, that was a big skill that I learned growing up in sports.
I guess I'm not a sports person. I did play basketball, but I played it more like football, but that's another story. Um, I guess the thing that I want to add is that you don't have to be good at everything. And so building your network is key. And it's okay to not be good at everything. Everybody has a gift. And so that's why they have different positions to play. And so knowing that, and that's with anything in life, we don't have to be good at everything, but we can build our team on the court and around us to kick butt. Kick butt. We can kick it every day. So that's my sports 2 cents. Unity.
I love that.
I'm glad that you said that we don't have to be good at everything. That's a good point. My mentor, actually, when I was applying for the job with the Packers, I was just so hesitant, like getting imposter syndrome again, basically, like, oh, there's so many other people that are more qualified. I can't do this, And she said something that really stuck with me. And it's probably a lot of women do this. We look at the qualifications and we see one or two things that we can't do. And we're like, oh, I can't do it. I'm not going to apply for this job. And she says, a guy sees one thing on the qualifications, one thing that he can do, and everything else, he's like, oh, I got this job in the bag. I'm going to apply for this. And they just have so much confidence, but we just doubt ourselves so much. And I don't know why we do that, but she basically said, like you, Ingrid, like, we don't have to know everything. And if we are a great person and we're qualified for this position, they will teach you and they will invest in you. So that's one thing I will always remember, like, what I don't know, I can learn. And what I do know, I will just keep expanding on that. And I will meet people along the way that will teach me and pay it forward.
Ooh, I'm jumping right in after that. That was so good. So before COVID hit, I actually started working for, she was my former coach at UW Green Bay for softball. And her sister, who I actually played against growing up in high school, these two women started this company called 360U. And the whole point, there's actually two. So the first one is to teach young girls how to play the game of softball, right? How to hit, how to pitch, how to just be athletes, learn the game. And then this other incredible side that they were teaching these athletes was how to, basically what you just said, like grow that confidence. Because even when I was playing sports growing up, even when you get the accolades and all that stuff, you're still like, oh, like modesty, humble, like be grateful for what you've like just don't boast about it. Whereas a guy would be like, yep, I just won first team all conference. Like, awesome, go me. So rather than the whole ego side, this company was teaching these women, like, okay, after you hit this ball, you have to, like, you can only end on a yes swing. Like, you have to verbally say yes. And like, once you do, you're done hitting. So they just ingrained all these positive reinforcements in like these hitting sessions, and just the energy around what they were doing raised not just good athletes, like they were pulling in former D1 athletes to teach these women how to play the game of softball. But then you were bringing in this whole other element of the mental game. Like, yeah, you can do it. You are going to do it. Like, you are so talented, like having that positive talk and teaching girls that you should be confident in yourself and your talents. I mean, that is a whole nother level of the game that I'm glad I could be a part of before COVID hit, but definitely needs to be more of that, not just in sports, but sports are awesome, but in life too. Like, oh yeah, like, go you did great.
Actually, one of the best lessons I remember learning was from the captain of the US soccer team, the women's. Didn't she say find your wolf pack or something to that effect? Yeah, that really resonated with me, even though I'm not in sports or sporty at all.
And in public speaking, what I've learned is it's called looking for what you like. So, you know, if you're up and you're talking, or you're looking for the folks who are always smiling at you and shaking their head. And Dr. Lyerly, you're always my look for what you like whenever I'm talking, because Dr. Lyerly's very animated. She's like, oh yeah, I love it. And I'm always staring at her. But, you know, I've given many talks in front of people where people are vehemently shaking their heads like, absolutely not. And I'm like, okay, I'm skipping you. I'm just going to find the next person. And that's what you have to do. I mean, to your point, exactly. I mean, that confidence is everything. And you're right. I mean, as women, we are taught not to be boastful, you know, be meager, be humble, be quiet, don't take up space. And, you know, the first thing I was taught when I went through Emerge Wisconsin, which is a training program for women running for office, which was before, if you get intimidated, make yourself as big as possible. So I would go into these, you know, candidate debates and go into the bathroom and literally put my arms out and stand and just be as big as I could, because it's just, you're going against what your reaction is to be small. And we have to teach our girls to be as big as they need to be and take up a lot of space.
Okay, so I think I have another question. It's actually a two-parter, but I'll start with the first part. Okay, so what are major breakthroughs in your respective industries?
You want me to go first? Okay, I'll start. In medicine, I don't know if everyone has heard about the gender pay gap. Women physicians make 80 cents, anywhere from 75 to 85 cents for a dollar that male physicians make. And that is after adjusting for hours worked and specialty. And this is despite having better outcomes in many cases. Equal or if not better outcomes. Some studies have actually shown better outcomes. But anyway, so the gender pay gap has been reduced by 2% in 2 years. So I will say that is something. Women now make up more than 50% of medical school applications, you know, and medical students. So that's an advancement in medicine for sure. And the only women leadership in medicine is still very lagging. That's another area we have to work in, even though I'm lucky enough to be in a hospital where the CEO is a woman and the CMO. Only 3% of CMOs and CEOs in healthcare are women. So we still have a long way to go.
We sure do. And I'll say absolutely everything that you said, Dr. Verma. And I just want to emphasize, we get paid less and we have better outcomes. It doesn't make any sense. My class in Madison was the first class to have more women than men. That's positive. But here in Brown County, we are lagging desperately behind. So that's why we need to continue to support each other in medicine, because we have a long, long way to go.
I'll be the voice of the waste and construction industry here, but I don't have anything I don't know any facts if we're making progress as women. All I know is that we too have a very, very long way to go. I can safely assure you that I am one of few women who walk out onto landfills and one of few women who walk into building supply stores. So I know it's both industries do have a lot of progress to make. However, it is super fun to see a lot of administrator roles and direct roles starting to be filled by women, particularly at ours. In Outagamie County, our administrator is a woman a year older than me, and then myself. So, I mean, we went we're doing some fun stuff at Outagamie County, but that's not the way it is across the board. So a lot of progress to be made in both industries.
I can say something about the educational world. Our classrooms are typically filled by women, but where we find that we are lacking is women of color. And so our kids, we have a very diverse population, and we have to adjust to that, whether it's uh, creating more opportunities for women of color, or it's helping our current staff understand and work to adjust and being culturally responsive to the needs of the students that we have. So, yeah, that's where we are. Unity.
In sports, personally, I believe that I was the first person hired from an HBCU, so that's a some progress being made. My ultimate goal is to bring in more people of color into the Packers organization and more females. There's not a lot of females being represented. So we still have a long ways to go in sports overall, but progress is being made.
I'm gonna jump right in behind that then. Yeah, progress is being made. It's like a lot of industries, there's a long ways to go. Before I came back in 2018, the role that was in this office was just the business manager. And then when I was asked to come back, I told my AD, I'm like, I want to come back, but I want to be the senior women administrator. I want to be the assistant AD, and I want to be involved in basically everything that I can get my hands on. And so I'm very happy that I was able to get that role and we were able to grow that here. But I really want it to keep going. We still have part-time coaches for a lot of our sports, and that's a struggle on campus, and not having someone that they can come in and talk to and someone they can connect with on campus is really tough. And especially in our female sports, I tend to have a bias towards having a female on staff for sure. And if it can be the head coach, even better, just because it does so much for our student athletes.
So in the Wisconsin State Legislature, it will come as no surprise that it is overwhelmingly made up of older white gentlemen. But it was very exciting this year. The 10 Assembly Democrats that were elected to serve as freshmen was the most diverse group of freshmen to ever become elected. So we had the first Asian American, we had the first Muslim gentleman from down in Milwaukee. I was the first woman to serve in the 90th for 40 years. So, and of that 10, not a single one of us was a white man. So it was pretty incredible to see. Yeah, it's just such a fantastic group of people. But what I would say, where I see us here, one of the things I'm really concerned about within trying to make improvements is supporting people who really speak truth to power, people who speak out around racism or police brutality or sexual harassment. What I've seen in the many spaces that I exist and kind of observe is that it's very difficult to sustain that level of truth because our culture really teaches us and forces us to sit down and be quiet. Someone said earlier about the comments from, another event you all had. I remember I was in a Women's March Wisconsin, had an event at the YWCA, I think it was right after the Trump presidency in 2017. And it was this beautiful day. 500 people came to the YW. People were packed about talking about these issues. And I came home and my heart was full, and I pulled up the news on Facebook, and it's like, now I know, don't read the comments, right? And it's like, you go through these comments, just of how much hate there is. And we do that to each other. It's not just men, women do it too. We do it to each other as well. So I really want to find space that we can really support when we have to have those hard conversations, because some of the culture here can be pretty destructive and silencing voices, and those are things I really think we need to push through.
Definitely. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Verma.
That's okay. I was going to talk, you talked about racial, differences, and that's another thing I'm really passionate about, because I have witnessed healthcare with COVID-19, the healthcare disparities, racial healthcare disparities have been exposed more than ever. And that's something I also feel very passionate about. Yeah.
So for our next question, we kind of want to switch to like advice path. So of course, empowering our young women is ever so important. But I think one area that also gets overlooked is empowering women your current age or older than you and elderly, So what sort of advice would you offer for empowering women throughout the lifespan? Yeah.
I'll jump in. I think for me, what I have always lived by is that there is enough for everyone. So me helping you does not mean that I don't get any. Actually, it's the opposite. Me helping you, I actually I'm gonna use the term blessed. I actually get blessed in other ways. So I'm here to uplift you and people around me and uplift them in the spaces and the gifts that they have. And so when I do that, then I am elevated. It might not be in this way, but I'm elevated in some way. So I would just say there is enough for everyone. We just have to make sure that we are supporting each other. There's enough tearing down in this world, and we don't need to be doing that. Unity.
I love that so much, Ingrid, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's about mentorship. I think if you are the person who is seeking something, find that person who can help you get there. There are plenty of women and men out there who want to elevate you, who love that unity piece. So find your mentor. And my second piece of advice would be, don't give up. If it's something you truly love, do not let a roadblock get you down. It doesn't matter how many times you fall. It matters how many times you get back up.
I would say look for the helpers. Help can come in the most curious of spaces and of people that you never thought it would exist. People that maybe have different political ideologies or religious backgrounds or whatever. And you want people who are going to be ride or die for you, who are going to lift you up and championing you no matter what, but also hold you accountable and tell you to get your shit together when you need to get your shit together. I mean, that honesty is important, and that radical love. I mean, acceptance is not blind. I mean, you need people that can do both. And I believe we can hold each other up and at the same time hold each other accountable without tearing each other down. And what I have sought is people of all ages. And I have friends that are, much younger than me. I have friends that are much older than me. And I really have learned to look past those, typical barriers that, I have a friend who's in their 70s and I would hang out. They're like my best friend. That might seem curious, but that bonding experience really has been very rewarding in my life. So look for the helpers.
I think for me, a lot of it dives back to education. So not just educating our current, like the women like us, but the younger, the little girls, but not just them, the boys too, a lot of us, well, I'm not, but our mothers of young boys or aunts, babysitters, neighbors, and just holding all of them to kind of that similar, you can do anything. Like you can go play with a doll, you can go play with this truck, and all of you can grow up to be whatever you want to be. And for me, I think that's why my brother and I grew up the way we did, because I didn't really realize it then, but my parents did a fabulous job of that, just putting everything out there for both of us. It wasn't like you are only going to play sports and you are only going to sit and help me in the kitchen kind of thing, So I grew up the athlete, my brother did not. So I just think education, especially at a very impressionable age, is huge, and just exposing both to equal opportunities will get us a lot further. So these children aren't growing up repeating the same things that our generation and the generations above us did. So we'll see what happens with that.
I think being aware of your mental health is huge in this role, because in order for you to show up and be your authentic self and be there to support others, you have to be aware of your mental health. COVID definitely made me stop, because the world stopped and we stopped athletics and we got sent away from campus. And it was a good moment for me to figure out my mental health and grow from that and realize what I needed to do and how I needed to slow down and what fills my cup back up. Because you can't show up and be your authentic self and be your best self if you don't have those recovery days or days where you just get back on that mental train. So being aware of your mental health is going to make you be better. And by you being better, you're going to make everybody around you better.
So I just want to let everyone know we have one more question, and I would love to keep the space open for answering for this question because I think this is really important, especially for all ages. But we are aware of the time, so we will be going a little bit over. So if you have to leave, this will be recorded, and this was such a fantastic conversation that we're definitely going to be publishing this. But we have a little bit more left if you guys are willing to stay and share more of your amazing advice. And I want to give everyone the space to speak. So if you want to speak now, please. Or I can just move on to the next question. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. So our final question is in honor of the International Women's Day theme, which is choose to challenge. So I mentioned this in our intention, but this is both celebrating women and also calling out where there's gender bias and everything. And so my question is, how do we challenge gender bias, celebrate women achievements, and create an inclusive world?
Wow, good question, Kara. Think about that one.
I think about this all the time with my kids because, like I said earlier, I've got 2 adult children and 2 teenagers, and they're growing up with a pretty feminist mom. And we have a lot of conversations that are very real. We don't hide things. We address things that we hear in the news. Getting the kids through the Trump presidency was a very interesting experience. I think it is our obligation to listen to each other, to talk about the tough things that we maybe don't want to talk about, but to make sure that we bring it up and we listen to each other. We may not come to an agreement, but we find those little nuggets and we learn a lot about each other. Eventually, my hope is that we are going to find this society where we all recognize that, like Ingrid said earlier, there's space for everybody. It's not like when I get something, somebody else doesn't. There's room for everyone to grow. And that's the message that I'm trying to teach my own children and that I try to teach people when I'm doing my work with mentoring and just community engagement.
I love that, Kristen. And I love the theme of choose the challenge because I really live my life of you have to move through the challenges and you have to move through the heat to get to the other side. You can't go around it as much as we try. The comfort zone, the heat is where you grow. It's where you transform. It's where you turn into a butterfly. And you've got to have those folks around you and you've got to have your support system. And that's where the intersectionality of it comes forward, right? Because that's where things like housing and transportation and living wage jobs and childcare, all of these things supports that growth or not. But we need people who are supported so that they can move through that heat. Because I think when we do and we get comfortable with that, you sharpen up that muscle and that skill and because it's never going to go away. I mean, the life is the beautiful and the ugly. You've got to be able to see both and be able to navigate and pivot every day. What I worry about as a culture, we haven't been sharpening those skills. And to your point, exactly, Dr. Lyerly, having little kids and seeing them, I mean, kids are incredibly resilient, and our young people today, I mean, all y'all on this call, they're younger than me, are way further than where I was when I was your age because you've been doing the work. So kudos to each of you and keep doing it because it does, it makes you stronger.
I'll piggyback off of that. I think that there's a couple of things. Well, I know. We all have a story and we all have a story to tell. And so when we can be vulnerable in those spaces where we can help others because they might be going through some of the same challenges that we've gone through. And somebody said earlier, I learned about it when I was 40, how good it would have been if I would have learned about it earlier. So that's where that mentoring comes in at. But then that's also where that self-care comes in at, because it's a hard road. And sometimes you need those champions. You need those cheerleaders that surround you to help lift you up in those spaces too. Because self-care is important, being aware of your mental health. And so some days you're going to be over 100%, some days you're going to be at 50%. And so, but we all have that story in order to share with someone else to help their lives be better. Unity.
I love that, Ingrid, because the story aspect is what I work on every day. If we don't share our stories, who will? How will someone else know how to deal with the circumstances if they don't know that someone else survived those circumstances or overcame those challenges before? So that's why I write a blog, and that's why I do all the writing that I do, is to share everybody's stories, especially women. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I feel like once you talk about certain, like those tough subjects that you mentioned earlier, they just lose a lot of their fear, like once it's out there, and you're like, oh, that's not so bad anymore. Like we talked about it already, like I can battle through that. Or even if it's an unbelievably daunting topic, at least it's a little more manageable moving forward. So yes, story sharing, just talking about experiences in general can help save time and just get you to where you need to go a little sooner. So definitely the power of sharing stories and talking about experiences will truly make us progress a little further as a society.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And also how we can celebrate women right now. Personally, I try to be intentional, especially this month, because it's also women's month, women's empowerment month. Also, just being intentional about giving women their roses while they're still alive, while they're still here. Complimenting someone every day, saying, "Hey, that was great," at work. My coworkers, telling them I really appreciate that. Like, you never know the power of words and when people need to hear positive affirmations, especially right now during COVID. People are spending a lot of time by themselves. You never know what people are going through and what they're dealing with. So just always being intentional and just talking to people and just being there for them, because everyone has their own story and their own journey. But just being a good person just really can help.
I think this last year, calling a spade and being intentional, that if something is rude to you and something you don't agree with, having the conversation with the person that said it, or sitting down and saying, okay, so I do not get where you are at, so let's meet here and figure out how we can move forward from this, because education is going to help you in it, understanding where they're coming from. And being able to have those tough conversations go a long way, whether that's in your professional life, your personal life. Having those tough conversations really help you grow and move forward together. And sometimes I'm not going to agree with you, but at least we were able to have that tough conversation.
I think that was everyone. If you didn't get to share, please yell at me right now, because I would hate to leave everyone in the dust. But I just want to give a huge thank you to everyone all of our panelists who were able to share their amazing stories. You guys had so many little nuggets of wisdom in every conversation you had to say. And even though you all have different careers and different industries that you work in, the advice and the stories that you shared really just transcends from each career and everything you do. So I really appreciate you guys for coming out and sharing everything today. And I really appreciate the Norman Miller staff members, Ava, Bethany, and Morgan. It's actually Morgan's birthday today, and she came on to chat with you guys and share her story. So thank you guys so much.
Can we get a picture real quick before we wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay, is everybody okay if I take a picture of us and then I'll email it to you, Kara?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, hold on. All right, everyone looks their best. All right, I got it. I'll send it to you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and thank you so much for sharing your stories. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Happy birthday, Morgan.
Thank you.
Birthday.